All right, we can go ahead and get started. Today, we're presenting another webinar. It's the power of Descope Flows, and we're covering frictionless user onboarding. So I'll introduce myself, and then Kevin will introduce himself. My name is Chris Carper, and I work for Descope. I'm located in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I enjoy driving and working on cars, big into car stuff and Euro cars, and really enjoy traveling. So we do a lot of traveling with our family as well as just the two of us. So yeah, that's me, and I'll let Kevin introduce himself. We share a couple hobbies.
Yep. As my name is Kevin Gao. I'm also a DevRel engineer at Descope. I live in San Francisco. As you can see, Chris and I share a lot of the same interests. However, I also like on weekends and stuff helping teach kids math as well.
Cool. So we'll get into it. Today, we're going to cover what Descope is, and then we're going to kind of transition into covering inviting users from the Descope console or via the flow, as well as customizing the invitation templates. And then Kevin's going to do a demo of a app waitlist implementation with Descope as well. So to cover what Descope is a complete authentication and authorization provider. We cover many of the passwordless methods, including like social login, biometrics, OTP, that kind of thing. But we also cover passwords and the different integrations with SAML and OIDC. We're a flexible and secure user management system. So we handle reback, RBAC, and SCIM and tenants. So if you have a multi-tenant kind of business-to-business use case, we can cover that as well. Our bread and butter is the no to low code workflows. And that essentially is the ability to step through the process of creating a Descope flow and embedding it within your application rather quickly. Then we also have the connector ecosystem, which is continuing to grow. So with the connectors, which I'll kind of cover today, the ability to use SendGrid or SMTP, connectors are essentially configuring the ability to work with Descope flows and go out to exterior endpoints to do different items that you might need. So sending emails, SMS, or even like connecting to HubSpot or your CRM to kind of capture the user's story within your funnel. So we're going to cover why Descope Flows for user onboarding is awesome. Essentially the ease of use. So just a couple lines of code, which is kind of our no to low code solution with Descope Flows. It's future-proof, so you can modify that journey without modifying your code. So you go into your work or your Descope flow, update it how you'd like, and then it's automatically updated within your application because it's just loading that component. And then it's highly customizable, so you can kind of build out your flow as much as you'd like. And then we also have profiling, orchestration, and free of friction. So the free of friction kind of with passwordless, so you can do like social logins, that kind of thing to kind of speed up your onboarding experience for your users. Here we've got a handful of links. So we do have a free forever tier up to, I think, 7,500 users, monthly active users per month. So you can sign up and kind of test out Descope for your needs. And then we have the custom user invites, which is one of the items we're going to cover today, as well as the waitlist blog and video. That is the demo that Kevin's going to be giving for us today. And then the repo to that sample app. And then as always, we do have the off-town community. So essentially, if you're playing around with Descope and you want to get information or what have you, the Ask a Descoper channel within Offtown is very beneficial for you. And it looks like Noam has shared these links as well within the chat. So with that, we'll get started. So essentially, once you sign up for Descope, if you're in the free forever tier or a paid user, you've probably stepped through one of our getting started guides or watched one of our previous webinars. So when you log in for the first time, you're on the home screen. This is going to tell you to start the getting started flow, which you basically step through and configure like how you want your base flow to look. But then you can get into some of the deeper concepts. So today we're going to kind of cover the user onboarding experience. So inviting users and customizing that experience for your users. So we're going to kind of be focused on flows, users, and then project settings. So within Descope, you've got a couple different ways of inviting users. The first way is going to be from the users table. So you can click user, you can create multiple users, which are comma separated, or you can create a single user. Here you can give the email, the name, the phone number. You can set your custom attributes. So within this page, you can create your different custom attributes. So if you're doing like paid plans, or like you want to see what position the person holds, or create like another field, you can do that as well. So it's endless. We do Boolean, text, and numeric here are your options. So when you create your user, you can configure those items on the user, and you can also add users to tenants and add roles to those users. One of the users I'm going to be using today is this Chris at Descope here, which I've added to the Descope tenant, and it is a tenant admin for the Descope tenant. So that's going to come into play as we kind of start stepping through this. So just for an example, we can create a user. So we can kind of populate this information as need be, and we can say DevRel engineer. This is actually this test. All right, and then we can add this user to different tenants and give it different roles. So we can say this, and then we can create the invite. And within our email, we'll get the invite. And here, my email is currently giving us a magic link token here. So it's automatically going to authenticate the user. And I'm using a local host version of our B2B guide, or our B2B React sample app. So here, it logged me in. And if I come under here, I can see the data here. And I'm logged in as this user. So that is kind of inviting users from the console. From there, you might want to also invite users like from the SDK or from the flow. Within the SDKs, you can invite users via Node, Python, Go, etc. But you can also invite them from the API. So if you create users, you can set the invite field to true. So those are a couple other ways to invite users as well. We're going to first cover inviting user via flows. So the awesome thing about Descope Flows is you can build them out as you go. So you start with like a basic set of flows, and then you can add to them as you go. So right now, my sign up or end flow is checking if there's an invite token, which I'll kind of cover that more in depth in a little bit. Then if it is an invite token, it's going to go to this verify and then prompt you to add another auth method if you want. Otherwise, it's going to take you to the login screen, which you can see here. So this is like the main login screen. I'm now authenticated. But if I log out, this is your login screen. So that's going to be the screen that we have configured here. As usual, if you want to add more authentication methods, you can drag and drop them. Then once you save, if you refresh over here, you then have the new option. So with socials, they're always going to go to the OAuth side of it. So you don't have to add more OAuth items per social, which is pretty nice. But then within our flow, we kind of continue down. If you choose to continue with email, it's going to verify your OTP and then update user properties. If needed, create a tenant, etc. So that's kind of the general sign up or inflow, but you can invite users from flows as well. So that's what we're going to focus on first. Essentially, we're going to check if the user's logged in. If the user's not logged in, we're going to sign them in. And then this example uses email with OTP or just Google for now. But as usual, you can add more there. So once the user is authenticated, it's going to come down to a user invite screen. And here you can pass in the emails of the users you want to invite, separated by semicolons. So this is essentially this invite users field here. We do have a guide on this as well for including, no, that's not it. It's this one here. So again, it covers the flows or the console, but then here's the flows. So you drag the, you create the screen with this field here. So yeah, this is our screen. Once you complete this within the flow, takes you to the end of the flow. But during the user invite, once you add this action, you can change the name of it, you can change the connector, you can change the templates here, and then you can change the invite URL as well. Here it's configured to use the default project configuration, which we'll cover here in a moment. And then you can essentially override these pieces. You can add different roles to the users, and you can do it one of two ways. You can allow any user to invite other users, or you can allow only tenant admins to invite users. And so today, as we step through this, I'm going to demo this aspect of it. Essentially, the use case is if I'm onboarding a new customer and they have multiple users that they want to invite, they're probably going to start out with a tenant admin that's helping configure things and set up their use case, but they also want to invite their users. So if I'm the customer, I want to be able to prompt myself to authenticate further users. So, or not authenticate, but invite further users. So that's kind of the use case here, is allowing the tenant admins to invite users via flow. So the cool part about this too is you can embed flows within your application. So it doesn't necessarily still have to be like the initial sign up or inflow. You can embed other flows. So an example of that would be if I log in using my Descope.com account, I'm now logged in as a tenant admin. And so if we come back here, you see that this user is a tenant admin of Descope. So let's check this guy. So tenant admin of Descope. When I log in as a tenant admin within this example application, I also see the flow to allow me to configure SAML for the user. So this is another flow that we have, which is the SAML configuration flow. So similar to this, I can also add other flows, essentially like the invite user flow could go here, for instance. So if we look at the invite user flow, this one is checking if the user's logged in. So essentially, if I am authenticating for the first time, it's going to pass me down the path to authenticate. But if I'm already authenticated, it's going to go straight to the other invite user screen, which is similar to this. So again, to kind of recap, we've got the is user authenticated. If not, we log in and then we come down to the invite users. Again, we're checking that the user is a tenant admin only. So click done, certify this so it's easy to see. And then we can run through this flow within the flow builder. I'll authenticate with my Google, and then I can add users. So I can say, Chris, hello test at descope.com, Evan at descope.com, and we can go ahead and add another one. Okay, so then I click invite users. Since I'm a tenant admin, it allows me to do this process because we're checking that to see if it is. If I'm not a tenant admin, essentially this action would fail. We could create another condition to check if the user has the tenant admin role before we even get there and show that invite user screen. So we could say is tenant admin and then say yes, role user. If I can type, where is the role? I'm not finding the key, but there is a way to kind of check that that user has that role and then continue or not. So yeah, we can do that if we wanted to. But now if we go back and look at our users, after we've stepped through that flow, these 3 users have then been created. If I check my email, I now see that I have invites for these users. So these invites here. Again, this has the magic link option configured here, but I'll cover that in a minute. But once we copy this link address and let's log out, then I do this. I can then add other auth methods if I want to, and then step through. And currently it doesn't check. It doesn't prompt the user for like the username, but we could add that as well to the flow. So to kind of look back at the flow for sign up or in, we hit this invite token and then it says, do you want to add another method? Yes, no, and then continues from there. Once the user has accepted the invite, they're marked as active. So this is the user that I took that URL from. It's marked as active and it's added to that tenant. So let's then cover the invitation customizations. So in order to customize your invitation templates, you need to configure your own SMTP or other mail connector. So you can do like SendGrid or what have you. Within this environment, I have a few options. So I have a SendGrid connector here, but then I also have a couple SMTP connectors as well. So you can kind of select any of these. And there's a few places where you can configure templates. One area is underneath of like the different auth methods, but then the other area is underneath of your user sign-in or sign-ups and invitations. So this is within the project settings. Currently, it's configured to use the Descope connector, but since I have other connectors configured, once I select another connector, I can then customize my template. I'm gonna go ahead and create a new template and call it demo template. And we're gonna go ahead and leave this to say you've been invited to project name, which is gonna be labeled SendGrid demo. And then within here as well, you can configure how this appears. So if I wanted to say, like, just give some other text, like, we are proud to have you join our And then if you do the curly braces like this, you can grab the different items here. So you can see like the different off users. So you can put like their names and what have you. You can even say like their email or anything like that. So the double curly braces basically shows you the different options that are available here. So you can kind of play with those as you see fit. But this is all fully customizable HTML. So you can actually embed like images here if you want to add like a welcome banner or something like that. You can fully configure this as just raw HTML essentially. But once we click create on the template, select the template and save, if I go back and invite a new user, once I send this guy, see this update here in a second. This is going to come from a different sender because I'm using my SendGrid connector. So here you see that we customize this piece to have this text in here. But again, you can embed images or anything that you like here. So this is super customizable. So if we come back over to project settings, this is customizing the invitation for email. You can also configure sending invitations via text message. And if you use the Twilio connector, which is in here, you can configure your own Twilio connector and then configure your own template for SMS as well. But another option here, which we've been using, is to add a magic link to the invite URL. So let's uncheck that really quick and just show you what that looks like. So if we say Chris, no, and L. So now, if I look here, I now no longer have a magic link token. So this is essentially if you want the user to sign in without the magic link. So they basically go to log in with their email address. They can then add OTP, or even if that email address is also verified with Google, and you have the option checked within the Google Authenticate or the Google Auth method to merge accounts based on verified email. It'll just merge that account, so it'll still allow them access. So that's kind of without the magic link there. The cool thing about magic link though is it automatically authenticates that user once they have clicked on that magic link. So you can configure the token timeout and everything else as well to meet your needs. But if we save this again, within our docs, you can see kind of how to do this within the flows. So we cover how to set this up within the project settings, and then we cover how to do it within the flows, which I'll show you here in a second. We go back to our flows. We had the invite users, but once the users are invited, they're taken to the sign up or in flow. And at the beginning of the flow, we want to check if it's using that embedded or the external magic link token. So essentially, we're validating that there is or isn't a token already in the URL once they hit the sign up or in page. So here, when it is true, we're going to go down the path of verifying the token. So it's very similar to like the magic link flow. So just to kind of show you, if we do like magic link via email, it's going to come through here and then it's going to pull and then verify. So that's essentially what this is doing. It's just doing the verification part of this because we don't necessarily need to like send a new one, which is pretty cool. So we check if external token is true, and then it comes down the path of verified token. And then here, I'm sending you to a page that is basically saying, click next to be logged in, or you can add another auth method. So essentially, if you just click next, the user only has magic link or email as their auth method, but you can add others here. You could even say like sign up with phone and have a field here for your phone number, and then it would update the user's phone number and then merge that on top of that user as well. So then they can log in via email or phone. So let's give this a shot. Let's go ahead and go back over to the project settings. We've added a magic link token to the invite URL. And then if we invite a user, say, this user here, go ahead and fill it out. And we leave all this blank. So since it's at descope.com, it's already going to be added to that tenant once they authenticate, because within our tenants, we have the Descope tenant that automatically associates users based on email. Email wants to verify it's me. So before we test that, go. So we invited this user here. And then if we expand here, we've got this link, copy link address. And then if we open a new incognito window, that's got all the stuff on it, but it'll still work. So there we go. It validated our token, and now we can add auth methods if we'd like to. Otherwise, we can click next to continue. So that wraps up my section of things, and that covered inviting users from the console, as well as inviting users from a flow and customizing invitation templates. And again, you can always use the management SDK and API as well. So with that, I'm going to pass this over to Kevin to cover the app waitlist demo side of this. So stop sharing.
Chris?
Yep.
Awesome. So as Chris was talking about, the kind of theme of this webinar was frictionless user onboarding. And what I'm going to demo for you guys now is a concept of using Airtable as a as another method of controlling who's approved and who isn't approved to join an app or anything like that. And so you've seen, as Chris just demoed, how you would actually do that in the console and how you could implement that using Descope. But the power of flows kind of extends not only within the Descope environment, but actually beyond and into and to other services such as Airtable. And so in one of the links that we originally provided before Chris got started with the demo was our blog here. And this blog has a tutorial on how this is all going to work. So if you want to come back to this at a later date and don't want to hear me present it, you can also read about how all of this works. We have a GitHub repository as well to the sample app and everything. But let's just get started in the demo itself. So first, I want to show you guys actually how this is supposed to work. And so we have this demo Descope waitlist application that's deployed in Vercel. And this waitlist application is currently using this flow that I have, which is very, very simple. It's just a start flow or start action with a simple screen that says your flow goes here. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually design and build this waitlist application live for you in the flow editor. And then I'll show you a little bit about how the APIs and everything work in the backend. So first things first, what we want to do is the general concept is we're going to have the user log in. We're going to have them provide their email address and then verify that with an OTP. And then we're going to actually hit a server that it's an Express server that I have running in the back end. And I'll show you what that looks like. And that's going to verify with Airtable in my waiting list here, if the user is already there. If the user is already there, then it's going to check to see if that user is approved or not. And so we have a live waiting list that you can see in Airtable. And if a user is approved, we can check them approved. And the sample app will just generate a JSON web token and log them in. If they are not approved, then we're going to display some information like, hey, you got to wait till you're approved or something like that. And then finally, if they're not in the list at all, then we'll actually call another API that will add them and use the Airtable personal access token and APIs to add them to this waiting list here. And then me as the administrator can approve or deny them. And you can see all this logic happening in the flow. So let's get started. First things first, like I was saying, we want to provide a login screen for someone to type in their email address. And so we can design that here. We can use an email input box right here, and then a button. And we can say, continue with email, something like that. Very straightforward. So now when I run this flow, we can see the live changes that we make in this flow runner here. This is the screen that we just built. This should show up if I refresh this in our waitlist app. And so what I've done in this app, and I'll go through a little bit of how it works, maybe a little bit of the code towards the end, but this will be embedded in your app and will automatically update depending on any changes you make in the flow here. And so the next step is going to be to actually have the user sign in with an OTP. So I'm going to just drag in the sign up or in OTP email action, which will automatically generate a sign up or an OTP email action, as well as the verify OTP screen. You can see what that looks like here. And so this will actually send a code to my email, which will then get verified. And then from there, what I want to do is I want to use what is called a HTTP connector. We call them, they're basically webhooks. And what this is going to do is this is going to actually make a request to the backend that I already have spun up. It's going to pass in dynamically the user's email from the user that just signed up here. And that API is going to accept that and then check between Airtable and the backend that I have running, if that user is, whether that user is like already approved, whether that user doesn't exist, et cetera, and handle that accordingly. So I have this already configured here, and I'll also show you guys what that configuration looks like for like the base URL and everything. It's very straightforward. But from here, really what we want is the meat of the logic here is baked into a conditional statement. And the conditional statement is the conditional statement provides us three possibilities. One, if the user is approved. So we could say if the user is approved, and then we can use I'll show you. We can actually use the result that we get from the request in the conditional statement. So here, what's going to happen is in this code here, if the user is already approved, it's going to return true. If the user is not approved, it's going to return false. And if there's no data at all, in other words, if the user doesn't even exist in the Airtable at all, then it's going to return an add under the is approved key. And so what we can do is we can actually, from this context key here, connectors.http result, we can access connectors.http result. We can access this key is approved. And we can say, is it true? Is it false? What does it contain, etc. So hopefully that makes sense. basically when I hit the backend of this app here, if the user is, if it's approved in Airtable and it exists in Airtable, then we just return true. Otherwise, we return false. Or if it doesn't exist at all, we return add. And so if it returns true, that means that the user is approved. And so we'll have a conditional here that says if the user is approved, if it returns true. Now, we also want to handle the case where the user is not in the Airtable at all. And so we could say something like user is not in Airtable. And then again, we're going to use the same key. This is the actual key in the JSON that we receive from our backend. And we're going to say if it is equal to add, then remember, if it's equal to add, then that means that the data was not, that email was not present in our Airtable at all. And we actually want to then make another request to our backend to actually add that. And I'll show you what that looks like. But finally, otherwise, if the user is not approved, but they are in the Airtable, simply we can just say user is not approved. And that's a very simple conditional right there. So really, from this point on, let's just quickly review. First, it's going to ask me for my email. Then it's going to actually prompt me to log in. I'm going to use an OTP sent to my email. Once that user has verified their OTP, then it's going to make a request to my server. My server will determine, okay, is the user approved? Is the user not in Airtable, or is the user not approved? If the user is approved, then all we want to do is just end the flow here. So I will just use an end action. And I want to end the flow. End the flow essentially means authenticate the user. So once you hit this end block, all it will do is just generate the JSON web token, which will authenticate you, and your apps will be able to determine if a user is authenticated or not. So that's step one. Step two is the user is not in Airtable. So if the user is not in Airtable, then we actually need some way of adding it to Airtable. And I've actually already prepared an API here that is deployed at the same place as this check user API that we've already hit. And so that's what this post comes in. So this post here, you can see it's doing the same thing, except it's calling add user instead of check user, and it's still passing in the email from the previous form that we signed up with. And then we can say, okay, if the user is not in Airtable, obviously we want to add it to Airtable. So we're going to make a post request to our backend, which will use the which will actually use the Airtable SDK and actually add this user into our table. And you'll see that in a second. And then finally, if the user's not approved or if the user's not in Airtable, in any case, at that point, all we want to do is just display to the user, hey, you're in the wait list, but not approved. Please wait, something like that. Pretty straightforward, and you can customize this exactly how you want. But this is the screen, this is the final screen where that would be shown to the user if the user was not in Airtable or if the user was not approved. And so hopefully this kind of general flow makes sense to everybody. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to actually go back to our waitlist app. Let's demo and see if it actually works. So let's refresh this page. And this is a great thing about Descope is, this is just a simple React app using our React SDK. All the changes you make in your console are just automatically reflected in your app. So I didn't even need to redeploy or anything, which is really great. So I just can say kevin@descope.com. And let me just show you guys the waitlist real quick. So the waitlist here, I do exist in the waitlist. However, I'm not approved. And so if I'm not approved, theoretically, when I log in, it should say I'm not approved. So let's give that a shot. Let's get the code here. Go. Perfect. And then we will go paste it in there. You're in the waitlist, but not approved. Please wait. Perfect. And then the second use case, if we, return back to the original, is if I add a new user, say Kevin@dscope.team, that doesn't already exist in the waitlist. Theoretically, it should make that post request. And this will forward this to my Descope email here. I can paste that in. You're in the waitlist but not approved. Let's give it a shot. So you can see here, it just appeared. So it actually used the Airtable API and added this. And now the final step is, let's see if this actually works. So this is the running tally of who's approved and who's not. Now, if I say this user's approved, or actually I could say this user's approved, let's log in again with Kevin@dscope.team and see what happens. So now if I say Kevin@dscope.team, and I continue with email, get my code again. There, it's logged me in. And so let me show you actually what that looks like in the flow. So when I go to the flow here and I run it in the flow runner, if I log in as Kevin@dscope.team, get one more code. You could see it actually just automatically authenticated me. Here are my session refresh tokens, and I'm logged in, which is great. And so, so you can see, Descope has all of your user invitation related kind of functionality baked into the flow. But even if you want to manage this on your own, you can do that with using these connectors. So these connectors here, and I can just show you guys what that looks like as far as in your own app. So if I go to these APIs again, you've already seen these. This is just my Express server already set up here. And also the app that you saw, the front end, just shows Descope as the flow component here. This is the component, the React component of what you saw, which is that entire flow process. This is automatic. This is dynamically hitting our backend and displaying everything and all the changes that you make. So you really don't have to make any changes to your app at all. And so the connectors that we actually support, and Chris showed the SendGrid connector as well. But theoretically, with this flow, you could send emails, let's say the user's on Airtable, you could send an email with a SendGrid connector after to say, hey, the user's already, thank you for joining the waitlist. Here's some information, things like that. So you could, use one of these SendGrid connectors, and there's a lot of other different connectors, marketing connectors, HubSpot segment, things like that can really enhance your authentication flow and experience. And then the real power is even just with these generic ones, being able to develop all the core logic in your own system and be able to make get and post requests to your own backends is really cool. So that's pretty much the entire demo. If you guys are curious about how this waitlist works a little bit more, like you actually want to see the code, you can actually go to our GitHub repository here. It's explains how you set it up. It's very straightforward. You just clone the waitlist sample app repo. You would need a Descope project, of course. So you just provide your project ID. And then if you want to use Airtable as your nice waitlist, you could set up a free Airtable account, put in your personal Airtable access token, and then you can, with one click, deploy this entire app to Vercel, which is what I've done. And you can see that app is hosted at waitlist sample app preview descope.org. Cool. So yeah, looks like we have a little bit of time left. I'd love to answer any questions that you may have. Let's see. Is there a way I can send emails in the flow to users to let them know that they've joined the waitlist successfully? Okay, so I think I already answered that, but yes, we could absolutely do that with using the SendGrid connectors that I was mentioning. So you could put a SendGrid connector here. I haven't actually configured this, so you would need to configure this, but you could send it to the user's email. So you can pass in dynamic values here the user that's already signed in, you could say, welcome to the waitlist. And then you could say whatever you want in your body, test. And then if the user's been added to the waitlist, you could then pass that in and then still display you're on the waitlist, but not approved screen. All right, so let's take a look. All right. Can you invite users with SDKs or APIs? Yes. I believe I answered this one as well. Someone else asked a similar question. Yes, you absolutely can. There's documentation for both of those. So if you go to our docs page and you go under manage and user management, you can see how you would actually use the management SDK. We have Node.js, Python, Go, and Java, and you can see this is where you would actually, provide the ability to invite users. You can also use the APIs as well. Management SDK is the more preferred approach, but you can use anything you can really do with the management SDK. You can also do with the APIs here. I know you should how to customize the email invites, but can you share a bit more about customizing SMS invites as well? Okay. Yes. So for SMS invites, if you wanted to send SMS invites, you can use, so there's a few options for, so you could use something like Twilio, which is the cloud-based cloud-based SMS provider, which will actually use you have to pay for credits and things like that, and you can use whatever phone numbers and messaging service numbers that you want. And then this connector would again just kind of insert itself very nicely in this flow. It could send whatever SMS text that you want to let the user know they're on the wait list. So this would be great for like if you have a like a concert or some kind of event, and you want just a very simple lightweight wait list to handle this, and you want to just have a user be able to sign up with their phone, they can just when they go to the website, it'll automatically render on their mobile browser the flow. They can walk through the flow, and then they're in the wait list, and you could have a text sent directly to them. And the only difference really is when you actually would use something like the connector, you could actually instead of passing in, just so you know who they are, instead of passing in something like user email, you could also pass in something like user phone. And so this would allow you to keep track of someone based on their phone numbers. Anything that's considered a user attribute, both custom or default. So you can actually assign custom attributes for specific users if you want additional information to collect about them in your flow. You can do all that and then access those dynamically with those two curly braces anywhere in the flow. Are there any other questions? All right. Well, it looks like we have a little bit of time left, but that's okay. Again, all of the links to everything that's been demoed here, including all of Chris's user invite flows, how that all works, the docs that I supplied to the people who ask questions, or the waitlist blog, and all manner of code and everything related to that is all accessible. So, and feel free, if you have any questions, I'd highly encourage, especially for all you developers out there, I'd highly encourage you to join our Authtown community, start playing around with Descope. You could sign up. It's totally free. And you can start using this in your app very, very quickly and ask questions in that Slack community. There's thousands of developers just like yourself building really cool use cases with flows, such as this one. Awesome. Cool. Well, I think it's okay to wrap up a little bit early. Thank you everyone for attending, and have a great day.